So I wanted to try a new little art experiment.
So I found a black and white photo of a lion online, and then I ran it through a program that pixelated it.
I then came up with 6 grayscale reference strips and moved 1 pixel at a time across my reference picture, assigning a number to each pixel based on what shade of gray it should be painted according to my reference strips. So I have now finished numbering all the pixels on my reference drawing with which shade of gray I'm going to use. So it's kind of like a giant homemade paint by numbers. So my next step is to completely grid out the trampoline. I've decided to make my pixels 1.5 inches by 1.5 inches. So I'm pretty much just using a 2x4 and drawing lines horizontally and then vertically all the way across the trampoline so that I end up with lots and lots of squares. I figure I ended up with about 1,400 pixels altogether. I then took my reference drawing and starting from the middle, I worked my way down and across, filling in all the squares with the reference number to the pixel. So I'm done gridding out the entire trampoline with all the numbers, a number in each square corresponding with the shade of gray that will be in that square. And I completed the entire thing.
Time to start painting.
Initially, I decided to paint the number 1s, which was my darkest shade of gray other than black. But very quickly I realized it made much more sense for me to start with the lightest colors and work toward the darkest colors if I was going to be potentially overlapping the edges. So I did the number 6s instead, which was my lightest shade of gray. So at this point you can see that I've finished all of the lightest shade, which is the number 6, and moved on to the number 5s. And at this point I'm doing the number 4s. You can see the 3 different shades of gray there. The number 4, 3, and 2 were the ones that had the greatest number of pixels. The colors or shades that were on either end definitely had fewer, like the black or the very dark gray had fewer pixels, and the white and very light gray had fewer pixels than the ones that were sort of in the middle of the grayscale. It's funny because when I look at it now, I feel like I can actually already see the image emerging at this point, even though it just looks like a bunch of gray squares. Because I know what the image is going to be, my mind sort of fills in the empty space. When I was deciding what shade of gray to do each square, I basically just had to sort of create 6 different shades out of some black and white paint that I had, and just have them be different enough so that as I painted them, there was contrast from one square to the next. I wasn't really sure how it was going to turn out because I didn't specifically associate each gray that I made with the gray on my reference drawing. I just made a sort of running scale of 6 grays that went from lightest to darkest. At this point, I've done my number 6, 5, 4, and 3, which is my lightest 4 shades, and I'm working on all my 2s at this point, which is my second darkest shade, and then on to my number 1s, which is the darkest shade of gray, before I decide to fill in the black. There are a few black pixels right in the middle for the eyes and the nose, and then there's a lot of black all the way around the outside that sort of gives definition to the picture. I feel like at this point you can really start to see the line emerging, and it's coming together. So at this point I've done all my shades of gray, and I'm just filling in the black. So I did do a black border all around the outside, so I used a big brush for that, and then I used my smaller brush to sort of go right up against the pixels that I had already done, and also to fill in the black pixels that are in the middle of the painting, like I said, for the eyes and the nose and the mouth and a few other really kind of defining features. And look at that, we're pretty much done.
Turned out pretty nicely. You can definitely tell it's a lion.
Hope you enjoyed the making of this painting. On to the next art experiment.